Hey everyone, it is super early here this morning, and I'm very tired, but I was woken up to share this message. Um, so, welcome, welcome. My name is Jackie Ellis, and I am an energetics master, and I an intuitive mentor, Reiki master. I see energy and I help people decode the energy within them so that they can transform their life into a life that they love. Today, I was guided to share with you a little bit of insight around triggers, specifically around who's responsible for the trigger and why that is so. I'm putting this on my podcast, Be Simply You. So if you are needing a more audio version, you can check out my podcast and get the audio only. Okay, so the trigger. The trigger. Society has trained us, has conditioned us. Most of us have been conditioned to believe that when somebody else is triggered, we are responsible for causing that trigger. We are responsible for fixing that situation where they are triggered and making them feel better. But are we? Now, I'm not saying that you can go around and be an asshole to someone else and cause problems, because if you are intentionally stirring the pot, if you are intentionally making situations difficult for others, knowing that you are going to get under their skin and pick at them, then you have a responsibility. Now let's break that down. Let's break down even the word responsibility. Responsibility is the ability to respond. So we as individuals have an ability to choose how we want to respond. So even if we're in a situation where someone is pick, trying to get under our skin, we have a responsibility, we have an ability to respond in a different way than we used to. We don't need to choose to allow that to get under our skin. Now, if someone is triggered, that's their trigger. And how do I know that? How is that possible when we have been conditioned to believe that we are responsible for them feeling that way? Say you were in a situation where you were just having a conversation with someone and all of a sudden they got upset. And you really don't know why they got upset. You were caught off guard. In that case, in that situation, you were not responsible for how they were triggered. Now, a lot of people will ask me, well, how is that? When you break down your side of things, you didn't know what they were thinking. you were expressing things in a way that was honorable towards yourself and the other person. In other words, you were not in a fight. You were not in a heated discussion. You were not projecting your stuff on them. You were just having a conversation. So if you can't read their mind, you can't read their mind and understand what their subconscious is telling them that they need to be triggered about. So it's not your responsibility, because you do not have the ability to respond to how they are thinking, what their brain is telling them, because you can't read their mind. Are you following me? The flip side is the other person that is triggered. A lot of times when we are triggered, we aren't aware of what our thoughts are that caused that trigger. So if we are not aware of our own thoughts, how can we place the blame on someone else for being responsible for that trigger? They can't read our thoughts. It is our responsibility at that point, because we're the only ones that have the ability to respond in a different way, an ability to actually look within and start looking at the thoughts that caused that trigger, looking at the thoughts and going through the feelings and emotions and seeing why we were triggered. What did that have to do with me personally? That is our ability to respond in a different way. Now, if we were in a situation where we got upset because someone didn't help around the house. We come home from work and things aren't done, and it looks like people are just, the teens are just hanging around the house and not doing anything and not helping out, and we get upset because we feel like we're the only ones doing everything. Now, is it their responsibility to know how we are feeling and to try and anticipate how we will respond and try and avoid the landmines? To try and anticipate what our expectations are? No. And by doing that, by creating this environment, we are conditioning them to feel over responsible for other people. In this specific situation, a healthier way to handle it would be what my friend Linda calls front loading. It is sorting through my own emotions and going, okay, these are the expectations that I have. I would really like for them to, once they're done their homework after school, to clean up a little, to tidy things up so that the kitchen is ready for a meal, making a meal. or whatever the situation is, I would like them to make sure, instead of dropping their backpack and their shoes in the middle of the floor, to actually hang them up and put them away, and not have everything scattered everywhere and the trail of stuff for wherever they were walking at the time. But it's my responsibility, whatever those expectations are, to remind or to communicate to my children that that's the expectation, and to let them know that if they can't do that in whatever, in a situation where something happens and it wasn't able to be done, to be able to freely tell me why they weren't able to do it. Because things happen. Loads of homework. A test they had to study for, and they weren't able to, they were still doing homework before and didn't get a chance to get to the kitchen. Whatever the situation is, at least have them own their own responsibility, have them own their own actions, instead of having them feel like they are owning my expectations that they don't know about, owning my feelings that they can't anticipate, owning my thoughts that they can't anticipate. If they know what the expectations are, and know that they have the ability to say, I had too much on my plate and I just couldn't get to it, or whatever you want those expectations to look like, or allow them to negotiate for situations that are out of the norm. That is a healthy relationship. That is a way of communicating that is it's energetically, it is cleaner than expecting them to know how you are thinking, expecting them to know how you are feeling, and anticipating that, and teaching them to walk on eggshells around people, teaching them to try and anticipate what everyone is thinking and feeling, and then feeling responsible for how they're thinking and feeling. When lots of times when we are triggered, we don't even know how we are thinking and feeling, that for the reason why we were triggered. So expecting other people to know how we are going to feel, or what we're going to think about the situation, is unrealistic. And it's conditioning other people to feel over responsible for other people, which ultimately feeds a society, conditions a society to feed their worry and anxiety cycle. And that's huge. We have a huge amount, a large amount of the population that are dealing with mental health issues. And when you break down just the idea of who's responsible for a trigger in a time period where there's polarizing energies and everyone is getting triggered, The simple act of feeling responsible for another person's trigger places a spotlight on the fact that when we are conditioned to believe that we are responsible for how other people are reacting, are responding to a situation, then we are feeding our own anxiety in the situation. We are contributing to a society that is being harmful to their own mental health. And that saddens me. That saddens me. I would love for to help people learn to discern between what their responsibility is, what their ability to respond to a situation is. If I go back to the situation where someone is nitpicking and trying to cause problems and getting under your, like intentionally getting under your skin, they are they are triggered themselves. They are either avoiding an upper limit and avoiding something that, they're either bored and are looking for something to do. And why are they bored? Are they bored because they are addicted to drama and need to have drama, something dramatic happening in their life? So they are stirring the pot because they're used to, they feel uncomfortable when it is calm and peaceful, when there's not drama happening. That's their trigger. It's their responsibility to figure out why they're not comfortable with peace and calmness. That's their thing. And it's not our responsibility to sit there and go, you know what? Hold up the mirror and this is what you're going through. No. Just walk away. Because when we hold up the mirror, we are now taking responsibility for how they're acting, and we are taking responsibility for fixing their problems. Because at some level we are owning the situation. What do we get out of that? We're just adding to the drama. In that situation, the best thing that we can do for everyone involved, both yourself and the other person, is to just not engage. Walk away. Because then you're not allowing them to get under your skin, and you're not creating more drama by holding up that mirror for them to go, look, this is what you're doing. Because they may not be ready to see that. They may not realize that that's what they're doing. And until they're ready to make those changes in their life, it's not helpful for anyone to hold up the mirror. Because you'll just be talking to a wall. You'll be talking to their ego. They need to be ready to see it. And if they're triggered, their soul is telling them that they're ready to see it. But they need to be open enough to explore beyond what their ego is telling them. Their ego is not letting them see it. We need to, in every triggering situation, whether it's with someone else or within ourselves, we need to pause long enough to reflect whether or not this is an ish me or an ish you. Is this my trigger? Or did I have any part in this? Or is that their trigger? And I want you to be honest about that, because was it a situation where you didn't realize, things were going well, things were calm, and things, you guys were happy, and all of a sudden, you had a number of days like that, and all of a sudden you were irritated. And it was little things. And you found yourself getting nitpicky, nagging, doing this, doing that. And you'd pick at your partner, pick, poke, until your partner got upset. Okay, so now they're triggered. That's an issue. But what was your part in it? Is it truly just an issue, or is part of this an ish me? Because the nitpicking that you did, the actions and thoughts that you had leading up to the situation were actually an ish me. Another situation. I had a years ago when we went on a trip, I had these expectations of what our days would be like. I had these expectations of how we would spend our days and the interactions we'd have with one another, and it was just it wasn't a family trip. Well, there was a few different situations. The one was a family trip, and the other one was a trip with just my husband and I. And I was really good at holding expectations, but not really expressing what those expectations were and getting it out in the open and having those discussions before we went on the trip. I just expected that everyone would know what I needed. And so I'd get on the trip, and when things weren't going the way I thought, and I wasn't being treated the way I had expected, or we weren't having those interactions the way I had expected, then all of a sudden I was upset. Or I'd find myself irritated and really not enjoying what I was wanting to enjoy. If I would have known what I know now, I probably would have realized that either A, those expectations are unrealistic unless I have those conversations up front. Unless I'm able to front load, hey, this is what I'd like from this experience. Is this something that we can be aware of, be mindful of, so that we can make sure that we can enjoy this? Is this something that works for you? Is this something that you would like as well? and then go from there. You know, I had a family trip, and I was finding that I was wanting to plan every moment. And my family is very much a go with the flow sometimes. And I wasn't so much a go with the flow type person at that point in my life. And so I compromised. Like I found myself starting to schedule every moment, and then my husband goes, "Why are you doing that? Why can't we just see what we want to do?" And so what I did was I heard him, and I was really glad that he expressed that expectation for himself. And I heard him, and so what I did was I changed it to me doing research up front as to what activities are available and where they are and when they're happening, and really just do the research for the area that we were going to be in. And then I created a OneNote file with all of this information. And then in the mornings when we were having breakfast, I'd pull out this file and say, "Hey, what does everyone want to do? We're going to vote." And so we'd make a decision as a family what we were going to do, and we just went and did it. And if we wanted to go back and do something again because we didn't quite finish, we'd make that decision together as a family. And it was so freeing because I wasn't responsible for the planning, so I was able to enjoy myself. But when my husband sat me down when we were planning the trip and said, "Why can't we just enjoy, like just see what we want to do when we get there?" He essentially was saying, "Hey, honey, you're not responsible for the schedule when we get there. I don't expect you to be responsible for every moment of happiness and enjoyment when we get there. You can just be who you are." And you know, I'm going to tell you, it was uncomfortable at first because I was used to having that responsibility, and that was a ingrained habit that I had. And so I needed to really get my head wrapped around it and be comfortable allowing myself to do that. But I knew that that was my thing. That was my issue. That was not his issue. He expressed his expectations up front, and it was now my responsibility to go, "Okay, am I okay with those expectations? Or is there something that I can do to negotiate?" Well, so what I did to negotiate was I asked him to help me do the research for possible activities and things that we could do, not necessarily doing them all, but just to create a kind of a database of information for the local area so that we can pick and choose when we do get there and allow the kids to be part of that discussion and choice. And he loved that idea because then it got him involved with learning about the local area that we were in. And it really brought, and then there were some times that we were having this discussion, if it was a Saturday or a Sunday when I was looking things up, I'd say, "Hey kids, check this out." And they'd be like, "Oh, that's really cool. Maybe we can do that when we go there." And I'm like, "Yeah, maybe we can." So it really got us excited about the trip itself. Now, if I would have done everything myself, it would have felt like they were being forced to do that activity, and they maybe wouldn't have enjoyed it. And then if we would have planned to do something different than what I had planned, then I would have been like a little uncomfortable because my schedule changed. And then I would have been triggered. Expectations that we have on ourselves, expectations that we have on others, impacts how we are triggered. But it's our responsibility to pause long enough when there is a trigger, whether it's the other person or ourselves, to pause and go, is this mine or is it theirs? Did I have a part in it because I was holding expectations about myself or another person, the other person, that I didn't realize? Do I have a belief about the situation that they don't have because their perspective is different? That's okay. We are all unique. We're all on a different journey, different stages of life. I'm gonna stop here because I could go on forever and talk about this. But the one thing that I want you to realize is that the responsibility for the trigger is on the person that is triggered. And if you feel in any way responsible for the other, for their trigger, ask yourself, did you have a part in it? So was there something that you did leading up to this situation that you could have responded, you had the ability to respond in a different way? And if the answer is no, then it truly is a you issue. If the answer is yes, I could have been okay with the calm, peaceful environment. I nitpicked. I created drama. Okay, that was your responsibility. That was your part in it. That's the part you can own. Or I kind of anticipated that he would be upset about it, so I avoided talking about this until and really tried to get around having to talk about this. And so he picked up on that and actually got upset that I wasn't honest and forthright about the situation when it happened. Well, that's my ownership. I had the ability to respond in a different way back then, leading up to this. And so that is my part in this. That is my part of the responsibility in this trigger. But if you were just completely blindsided as to why you didn't know that your words or your actions would cause this reaction, then and you aren't triggered, you're just looking at them going, what just happened? You are not responsible for that trigger. Even the other situations, if you really break it down, you are responsible for your portion of it so that you can take ownership for how you respond, what your ability to respond to those types of situations in the future. Knowing that if you are more honest and upright, forthcoming about situations and your part in them, and just have the open discussion, you can avoid a big blow up with you and the other person. You knowing that you have a little bit of an upper limit problem when it comes to like life being drama free, and you create some drama. Well, yay, you figured that pattern out. So now you have a grounding foundation. You have a foundation to actually work on when you find yourself in situations like that. You can pause when you find yourself doing that and choose to respond in a different way. That's your responsibility. Your responsibility is not to help the other person work out what's going on with them unless you offer to give them, like, be there for them, and they take you up on that offer. But it's not up to you to hold up the mirror for them and say, hey, this is what you're going through. If you resonated with anything in this episode of Be Simply You, I'd really appreciate if you could share the love. And you can share the love by sharing this video, liking this video, subscribing to this video. If you have any comments, or if anything resonated with you, or if you have any questions, post them in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. If you'd like to buy me a virtual coffee, the link is in the description, and I use these funds to help me support my family and help me to make content like this for people like you. I've got a Soul Talk membership on my website, and it is a passion project of mine where I'm growing a community of people that are wanting to change their life, wanting to transform their life into a life that they love. And we talk a lot about the energetics of how they are feeling and what they're going through, and it is a support community that is helping people along their journey. The information is on my website. The link is in the description below. And if you are at all interested, we'd love to have you join us, no matter how long you decide to join. You can join for 1 month or longer. The choice is up to you. But until next time, I want to thank you so much for joining me on this journey. And I'd just like you to be simply you. Thank you.